Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of the Balearic Islands in Spain. First of all, pronunciation, because I've never even known if it was Balearic Islands or Balearic Islands. And one of the things I was very excited about getting into the research for this video was to figure out how to finally pronounce this thing. And it turns out the answer is yes. It can be pronounced. Either way, they're both acceptable. So I might alternate between the two names because that's what I've kind of done my whole life. So I think the main consensus is Balearic in English. But again, either one is acceptable. But let's get into it. The Balearic Islands. Let me move this up a little bit more. There we go. The Balearic Islands. So there's actually quite a lot of islands here, but as you can see, there are 4 main islands in 2 island groups. And I also have no idea how to pronounce the island groups. And I tried looking up how to pronounce it, found nothing. So these islands over here are the Pitusic Islands, I believe. Or in English, they're known as the Pine Islands. So let's stick with that. The Pine Islands are Ibiza and Formentera. Now I do know, you don't have to correct me, that in Spain this is pronounced Ibiza. These are pronounced as a TH, Ibiza. But I'm trying to just stick to English pronunciations here, and in English we say Ibiza. So that's what I'm going to stick to, Ibiza. But just like before you head to the comments to tell me about how I'm pronouncing it wrong, I know. It's much more fun to say Ibiza, and I'd much rather say that. But then I need to be consistent throughout the video with the pronunciations. So we're sticking with the English one, Ibiza. The other group of islands you see over here, these are the Gymnesian Islands, I believe that's how you say it. And they are Majorca and Menorca. And again, there are lots of other little islands. We're going to talk about Cabrera and its history. You can see over here is, how do you pronounce it again? It's the Dragostera Island right there. There's lots of little islands around. But these are the 2 main ones. Majorca is Spain's largest island. You can see the capital city of Palma right here. What's interesting about Majorca's geography is up here is a huge mountain chain known as the, where did I write it down in my notes? There we go. The Sierra de Tramontana. And again, that's how I believe you pronounce it. Sierra de Tramontana. With the highest peak you can see right here, Puig Mejor. Not sure, but we'll take a look at them on Google Earth. Plus they're a UNESCO site. We're heading to that in a minute, so don't you worry, don't you fret. Menorca is also quite interesting in its history. We'll talk about that. You know, why don't we just head over to the UNESCO sites now? Yeah, let's do it. I'm too excited. There we go. So there are 3 main sites in these islands, starting with the entire island of Ibiza. The entire island is a UNESCO site. How interesting is that? Ibiza, biodiversity and culture. It says, Ibiza provides an excellent example of the interaction between the marine and coastal ecosystems. The dense prairies of oceanic Posidonia, or seagrass, otherwise known as Neptune grass, Posidonia, an important endemic species found only in the Mediterranean basin, contain and support diversity of marine life. Ibiza preserves considerable evidence of its long history. The archaeological sites at Sacaleta settlement and Puig de Molan necropolis testify to the important role played by the island in the Mediterranean economy and proto-history, particularly during the Phoenician-Carthaginian period. The fortified upper town is an outstanding example of Renaissance military architecture. It had a profound influence on the development of fortifications in the Spanish settlements of the New World. So there's a lot to see in terms of what these sites contain. All right, so we can see some nature here. Some of the beautiful town of Ibiza. Old windmill here. Some of the old fortifications you see over here as well. But we'll take a look at them on Google Earth later. We also have, here's the Serra de Tramontana. Make sure you can see all the words there. The cultural landscape of the Serra de Tramontana, located on a sheer-sided mountain range parallel to the northwestern coast of the island of Majorca. Millennia of agriculture and an environment with scarce resources has transformed the terrain and displays an articulated network of devices for the management of water revolving around farming units of feudal origins. The landscape is marked by agricultural terraces and interconnected waterworks, including watermills, as well as dry stone constructions and farms. And one thing I noticed about these mountains, there's only 3 pictures here, they're very beautiful. When I was looking through, these pictures aren't a good example, but this one kind of is. There weren't a lot of trees, and that makes sense because not a lot of resources means you're going to chop down most of the trees. So a lot of these are very rocky, barren mountains, but that doesn't mean there aren't any trees at all. There are some. And lastly, we're going to talk about Menorca. Menorca is probably the most interesting island historic-wise. And we're going to talk about the Taliotic Menorca. Located on the island of Menorca in the western Mediterranean Sea, these archaeological sites are situated in agro-pastoral landscapes, a testimony to the occupation of the island by prehistoric communities. These sites display a diversity of prehistoric settlements and burial places. The materials, forms, and locations of structures dating from the Bronze Age, or 1600 BCE, to the late Iron Age of 123 BCE, show the evolution of a cyclopean architecture built with very large blocks of stone. Astronomical orientations and visual interconnections between prehistoric structures indicate networks with possible cosmological meanings. So we're going to start history talking about the Taliot culture. You can see some of their amazing structures still standing. Here's a good aerial view of some. You can see the little round fortifications they made and big stone towers and walls that they constructed. Really fascinating. So these are found all throughout Menorca and in caves as well. We see lots of burial culture in their caves. This is probably one of the more famous kind of silhouettes of the culture. The big T shape. Yeah, these are found all over the island of Menorca, and some are on Majorca as well. Let's get this out of here and talk about the history, starting with the Taliot culture. So it was based on Menorca. Like I said, there are a couple sites in Majorca, but not nearly as much as on Menorca. We suppose they would have been there beginning around the 3rd millennium BCE. The first outside influence would have been the Phoenicians. They would have arrived in this area around the 8th century BCE. We know for sure that they established the port here of Ibiza in 654 BCE. And you know what's interesting about the Phoenician culture on this island is that the oldest evidence of their alphabet has been found here in Ibiza. And if you know why that's so important, is because their alphabet, the Phoenician alphabet, aka the phonetic alphabet, is the alphabet that we use in English. So this is the oldest origins we have of the English 26-letter alphabet. Isn't that fascinating? I think that's really cool. Eventually, these islands became part of Carthage, which was probably the most successful colony of the Phoenicians. They wound up becoming their own empire. But they would eventually war with the Romans quite spectacularly in the Punic Wars, which the Romans would eventually win out and completely sack Carthage. So after that, they came up to the islands here to settle on them. They arrived in the year 123 BCE and had quite a little presence here in the islands. Just like most of Western Rome, after the Western Roman Empire began to fall apart, this area was captured by the Vandals. And they would have captured it around 427 CE. But the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, was trying to do what they could to help out their previous land, I suppose, because it's still the Roman Empire. They captured these islands from the Vandals in 534, made it part of the Byzantine Empire. One interesting little note that we have, and I think I might have read a history magazine article about this or something. I can't remember what it was. But sometime in the 800s, a Viking invasion occurred here. We're not quite sure when it was because it's mostly a story of legend. There's no exact dates. I've read the 840s, I've read the 850s, 860s, 870s, sometime around then. But a squad of Vikings led by Bjorn Ironside came up and sacked the area here as Vikings would do. One of the very strange, just random Viking road trips, I guess sea trips, that the Vikings took. There are quite a few. They went up into Russia, they went to Istanbul. Just another very out-of-the-way place for a Viking to go and attack. Eventually, these islands were conquered by the Moors in the year 902. The Moors were just essentially Muslims from the Umayyad Caliphate coming from North Africa, setting out to conquer the Iberian Peninsula, which is what the people of the Iberian Peninsula, aka Spain and Portugal, called them. They didn't call themselves Moors, but that's how they're known in history. And they mainly used the islands, particularly here in Palma, as sort of a base to send out attacks if they needed to attack or eventually defend their land from the Christians who were reclaiming the Iberian Peninsula from them. There was one huge battle in 1109 when the King of Norway attacked. He was heading to the Holy Land on crusade and thought he'd have a little side quest here, and the Battle of Formentera was actually quite brutal. He pretty much slaughtered everyone on this island. Very, very brutal attack, and slowly but surely the Moors were pushed out by mainly the Spanish during the Reconquista. But they would eventually be replaced by the Almoravids, which was another Muslim people group, I suppose, from northern Africa, who were then eventually replaced by the Almohads. But the era of Muslim rule ended on December 31st, 1229, after a very long siege battle. The islands were captured by James I of Aragon. I've already done a video on Aragon. And James I ruled the islands as part of his kingdom, but after he died, in his will, he essentially helped form the Kingdom of Majorca, which is what ruled the islands after that. Now, it wasn't easy going in these islands in the years following, mainly due to pirates, the Barbary pirates, who or named after and led by Hayreddin Barbarossa. He sacked the town of Mahon here in Minorca in 1535, and he used Cabrera here as, I think, his main base, if it wasn't in Algeria, at least in the Mediterranean, his main base here, to attack other people's places, mainly to capture slaves to sell, but also to capture treasure too, I suppose. Formentera was completely abandoned from 1403 until the 18th century because it was just too dangerous to live there, because pirates would come raiding and taking slaves constantly here on the islands. A little interesting side note here in Minorca. In 1708, the island was captured by the British. It was the War of the Spanish Succession. Chaos was running rampant throughout Spain, and Britain decided to use that to their advantage and just take a little part for themselves. In 1713, during the Treaty of Utrecht, which kind of helped settle the dust of the war, the island was ceded to Britain officially. And some of you may know of this treaty because it's also the treaty where Britain was ceded, was given Gibraltar, which is still a British territory to this day. As the dust settled of the War of the Spanish Succession and things were reshuffled politically in Spain, the Kingdom of Majorca was no more by 1750. Did I say that? 1715. And the region just became a part of Spain, the Balearic Islands region. In 1756, Minorca was captured by France. It was the 7 Years' War, conflict between Britain and France, and during that chaos, France hopped in and took the island. Until 1763, it was given back to Britain. But later, in 1782, Spain took the island, and that was during the chaos of the American Revolution. Britain was very occupied with that. Spain thought they would snatch up this island in the meantime. And during the Treaty of Versailles, which was the dust settling from the American Revolution, the island was ceded to Spain and is a part of Spain to this day. So as an American, Spain, you're welcome for our people allowing Britain to be distracted so that you can take this island and make it part of Spain. But alas. Another interesting little note here about Cabrera. During the Napoleon times, beginning in 1808, this island was used as a prisoner of war prison for France until 1814, once all the Napoleon shenanigans was over. And this was actually pretty horrific because they were supposed to, the French were supposed to send a ship every 2 days with food, and sometimes they just wouldn't. And the people here pretty much starved, and it was very cutthroat and dangerous, and a very horrifying situation for the people imprisoned there. Now you can see it's a national park. It's all preserved and nice. But once upon a time, it was not very nice at all. The other kind of big historical moment here in the islands would have been during the Spanish Civil War. In 1936, the Battle of Majorca broke out between the Nationalists, which were led by Francisco Franco, and the Republicans, who were led by the pro-Spain, anti-Franco people. And they fought a war here. They fought a battle here, which the Italians came, of course, by that time that was fascist Italy, to help out the Nationalists. So the Nationalists went out. And in fact, Italy occupied Majorca. I'm not sure about the other islands. I was just reading about Majorca, but definitely Majorca. Italy occupied Majorca until 1939, when suddenly, very suddenly, Italy had other issues and they needed all their soldiers there. Shenanigans happening up in Europe, World War II essentially, and Italy pulled all their troops out. They weren't needed here anymore. Since then, the islands here have become known for one thing, and one thing only, it seems. It's just partying, and vacation, and summer, and rave music, and DJs. These are party islands. In fact, the big joke is that Majorca is the 17th state of Germany because many, many Germans come here to party during the summer. I think mainly Americans go to Ibiza. I know there's a lot of big music festivals, lots of like EDM, music festivals of all kinds happening there. But the other islands are big tourist draws as well. It's really blown up in the past couple decades. And essentially, that is the history of the Balearic Islands. Really, really fascinating. And we're going to head over to Google Earth now to take a look at these islands for ourselves. Now, of course, there's lots to see here in these islands, and I highly encourage you to poke around Google Earth yourself to check out any places I skip over, because I'm going to skip over a lot of the little towns here because there's just too much to look at. I'm just going to show you the highlights. So if there's anything you think that I absolutely have to look at, throw it down in the comments, and I'll check it out. Everyone reading that comment will go check it out so that we can see other parts of the islands. So again, I'm just going to show you some highlights because there's just far too much to see. Not to mention, just real quick, that a lot of the pictures of Google Earth on these islands are not great. There's a lot of repeats and pictures of just like the city skyline, which is nice, but I don't need to see 15 pictures of the city skyline. So if anyone watching this hops over to these islands at any point, take lots of interesting photos and post them on Google so that they wind up on Google Earth so that we can see more of these islands other than just pictures of waves, pictures of sand, pictures of rooftops. We'd appreciate that. So with that being said, let's head over to Google Earth so we can see some of the sights. Here we are at the Balearic Islands. Let's start by zooming out so you can see exactly where we are. So I should have probably mentioned this first, but the Balearic Islands are in the Mediterranean Sea. I just feel like that's something everyone knows. You can see Spain right here. France is just up there. Many other islands over here like Sardinia, Corsica. The African coast just down here, which is important because this was where the Barbary pirates came from in what's now Algeria. And Carthage, which remember once controlled the islands, was over here in what's now Tunis and Tunisia. But here are the islands. Where should we go first? You know what? We're going to go this way. Let's start down here in Formentera, which, as you can see, has a really lovely landscape. Lots of farmland. All of these islands have lots of farmland, but they have this huge lagoon as well. You can see the main town here, La Savina, which again is lots of pictures of just almost the same thing over and over, but it's a beautiful little shore with lots of yachts here. Beautiful water. You can even, if we zoom in, you can see all the fancy, rich boats out here in the water. And look how clear it is. You can even see it way up high from satellite imagery. You can see all the rocks and things below. Isn't that fantastic? It is an absolutely gorgeous place. So you can tell that, you know, once upon a time this was most likely connected. It's all sandbars now. But here is Ibiza. We're going to Ibiza, as the Venga Boys would say. Here's the main town, which was mentioned in UNESCO, the necropolis here, which I probably mispronounced. I said it the French way. We'd say moulin in French. Now, this is apparently the world's largest necropolis, and it was a burial site for the Phoenicians and later the Romans. So just a warning, there is some pictures here of real skeletons. I think there's only one, so once, if that bothers you, turn your screen away, make it dark, whatever you need to do. Close your eyes. I'll tell you when the skeletons are gone. But it's deep in these cool caves here. You can see the little tombs, and here's the skeleton man. You can see the skeletons there in their tombs. And zoom just like that, they are gone. So you can open your eyes or make your screen come back if you need to. Lots of cool little statues here. And a very kind of like Greek-inspired, I assume Roman, maybe even a Phoenician statue. You never know. And it's a really cool museum. All these little figurines here from times past. All of these burial sites. Lots and lots and lots of jars here. Very fascinating. And again, everything on this island is part of UNESCO since they are preserving the culture, the landscape, and the plants under the water, the Neptune grass, which is pretty awesome. And again, there's lots to see here. You can see the gorgeous farmland here and all the little towns. Again, let me know if there's anything I absolutely must check out, and I will. Here's Majorca, and here's Palma. Now, the big sight to see in Palma, once it decides to load. Hello, Palma. Are you good? You good, Palma? I don't think Palma's good. Come on. Alright, I'm gonna cut here and let it load. Alright, I'm back. The internet just cut out for a second, so it stopped loading. So let's get into it. The big thing to see here in Palma is the cathedral. The big cathedral here, Basilica de Santa Maria de Majorca, was completed in 1601, and in 1901 it was redesigned by Antoni Gaudí. Now, it may not look like much from above, but this thing is absolutely massive. It's way too big. It just dominates the entire city skyline. It's very, very beautiful, isn't it? But it's just massive, isn't it? It's huge. Maybe we can take a look in the inside. Let's see. There's lots and lots of pictures around here of it. Because it's probably by far the most famous sight to see here in Palma, and probably all of Majorca as well. Gorgeous inside, isn't it? Big old, this looks like Gothic style, but I'm never really good with my various architectural styles. But it's stunning. Look at that. It's like a castle. But I guess that's what a cathedral is supposed to be like, right? Or give off that kind of energy, like a holy castle of some kind. Gorgeous inside. I think if we just pull up the slideshow for Palma, there it is. I think it has some good pictures of the cathedral. I think it does here. Yeah, see, look, it just dominates everything. It's so big. And all the beautiful sights around the island as well. It's gorgeous, but massive. It's way too big. There's lots of other interesting things to see in Palma, but again, I'm just giving you the basic show. Over here you can see the mountains, right? And unfortunately, there's not a very good slideshow for the mountains here. I have to pull up the mountain here to get you a good idea of the slideshow. So this is Puig Mejor, which I'm guessing Puig means plug, like a volcanic plug. I think there's a little observatory or planetarium at the very top. Isn't that nice? But here you can see the landscape here, these beautiful, beautiful mountains, and you can kind of see what I meant by not very many trees. There's a little observatory on top. Big, see, it kind of looks like a plug, especially maybe there's some photos here of it in the distance. But not nearly as tree-lined as mountains of this kind are. See, look. It looks like a volcanic plug, which if you don't know is when lava just shoots straight up and then hardens and just becomes like a lump. It looks like that, but I don't know. There's lots of donkeys here. There's lots of very sweet pictures of donkeys around the mountains here. Or maybe mules, I'm not sure what they are. I can't tell the difference by looking at them. They're very sweet. It's a big, beautiful mountain. How lovely with all the clouds, the mist coming over. I can also see some sights around here. This is a good one. Here along this big mountain lake. So you see what I mean? Not too many trees. Big cave, maybe just a tunnel. I think it's just a tunnel. But there are lots of interesting caves all throughout these islands. There's a goat. More goats up on the cliffs. Look at the goats. Anyway, that is the mountains up here. You can really see them from above compared to all of the... It's still quite rocky down here, as you can see, but not nearly as much. Oh, look, there's a Taliot site. No way. There's an archaeological museum. I didn't see that. Look at... We're going to go look at more on the other island, but look, there's a site here. I told you there was some here. How interesting. Why don't we go look at the ones on Minorca? Because there's way more on Minorca. Over here you can see Mahon. Is there anything to show you here? There's a museum, but the pictures are just very sad. Yeah, I think I tried to scrub the city to show you something, but didn't really find anything. Again, please take lots of pictures in the Balearic Islands, please. Mahon, by the way, is where mayonnaise was invented. Isn't that cool? But, let's find a site to look at. There's all kinds. I say that, and then others are going to pop up. There we go. There's one. Very cool. If you're a long-time viewer, you know that I'm a sucker for stone circles and ancient sites like that. So this just tickles my fancy. It's pretty much like if I ever came to these islands, I'd probably come to Minorca first so I could tour all of these sites and see all of these areas here that, again, we're still not quite sure why they were built. They kind of remind me of the sites on Malta, which isn't too terribly far, right? I mean, it's not nearby, but here's another one. Not too far off. They're both in the Mediterranean. We know that some of them are burial sites. We know some are some kind of astrological sites. Some are definitely little homes and communities. But we don't know much else about these people besides that. Still quite amazing how much of the stones that they piled up to make their little areas are still up in the best capacity that they can, right? Beautiful flowers there. But yeah, they are all over the island. Bet you we can find one more. Lots of fincas also on these islands. The other big industry that's popped up is ecotourism. So you can find, they're called fincas. Here's one. Oh, the Taliot side, I mean, not a finca. But they're essentially eco-lodges, where they are places you can stay and enjoy the sights without causing any negative impacts to the environment. Everything's recycled and things like that. Creepy cave there. I don't know how I'd feel about going through all the caves, but I would still love to see all the old sites. And let's see if there's anything else I wanted to show you before I closed out this video. I think those are all the big sites I wanted to show you. Again, there is so much more to see. I highly encourage you to check it out for yourself. But we're going to end the video over here in Cabrera, this national park. And the best slideshow I found here was this one. So let's look at the sights of the island while I close out the video. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. Oh, I was going to show you a beach somewhere. I found a cool beach slideshow, but it's a beach slideshow. You all know what beaches look like. Because next video, we're going to some even better beaches. We are going to some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. We are heading over to Bali. And you're not going to want to miss the Bali video. So be sure to subscribe now. Hit that button now if you haven't already, because tomorrow's video, we're going to Bali. Can you hear someone in my family walking above me? I'm in the basement, so they're all above me. But they're all trying to be nice and quiet for you guys. So let's end the video here. Look at this little lizard. I hope that you found this video to be relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a good night. Good night.